Jesus was standing one day by the lake of Gennesaret with the crowd pressing round him, listening to the word of God. We have here this one pole, the word of God, and the preaching. The Lord made a podium. Getting away from the throng, he went into the boat, and he was heard by all. And then this miracle takes place, the huge number of fish caught, and he indicates that they will be no longer just fishermen, but they will be fishing souls. And of course it will be the Word that will be the instrument of that new employment. The Word then has to be heard. The Word has to be His Word, and that Word is empowered, for all truth is His, the Alpha and the Omega, the faithful witness. Souls need to hear the truth. But our faith is not just based on word, it is based on power. It is based on sacramental power specifically, and presence. And here then we have the other pole, which is very much absent in that of our separated brethren, which explains how they make very good work with the word. They use it to the full and develop preaching thoroughly. Our worship sometimes is imbalanced. The word, because it is about to lead to something, as it were, greater, sometimes is not given the attention that it needs. How often, for instance, do we have a service which is based on the word only? That leads, therefore, to a presumption that we only have a short homily. And indeed, the word sermon has almost disappeared. It is always a homily. Now, that could actually be worth looking into in itself, for there is no reason why, for instance, the office of Vespers, especially on a Sunday, could not be expanded to include a sermon. And it could complete the Sunday very well. That could be accompanied by good singing, even with incense at the Magnificat, and also with benediction at the end. People need more than just the Mass on its own on a Sunday. And our brethren, the Protestants, have always had more than just that. But with regard specifically to the Eucharist, there is a word that is being stifled. We know from several sources that the Lord Himself would be heard on one element which is close to His heart. It is interesting that our Anglican brethren always receive their Holy Communion kneeling. They have a certain decorum and unhurriedness. Why should we go into an accelerated mode at the high point of the Christian week? This needs to be looked at, for it is not just human what has happened in the last 50 years. The Vatican has tried, but in vain, to draw attention to the fact that extraordinary ministers are extraordinary. They are not always needed, and they are not needed when they're not needed. And to have them there when not needed is an abuse. In the end of the 1990s, there was a very strong document from several dicasteries together, personally approved in forma specifica by the Holy Father, requesting that this be stopped. And yet it goes on. Now, several things go on in that ambit. It is part, we know now, of something being pushed by satanic forces so as to be an attack on the real presence. It aids considerably the work of destroying the faith of Christians to take away the decorum that befits the body of the Lord and its reception. Receiving the Lord in an agitated and hurried mode does not benefit the soul as it could do. And it certainly does not honour the Lord to have people not dressed in sacred garb and not ordained to be doing what pertains to the ordained when there is no need for that to happen. Moreover, it is only a deacon upward who has access to the tabernacle. And the very notion of touching the body of the Lord with something which is not itself consecrated is fairly recent in time. For 2 millennia, nothing would touch the body of the Lord in any rite of the Church, east or west, that was not itself consecrated. And this was part of a divinely inspired panoply of defense for the greatest treasure that we have on earth. One is horrified when one compares the way that the Lord is approached in many a celebration now, compared even with, I say, the way that the invalid sacrament is received by some of our separated brethren. What has gone wrong? Familiarity breeds contempt. We have got too used to the greatest treasure that we have. Mariasima was asked before she died whether the Holy Souls had said or indicated anything with regard to this specific question, and indeed they had. They were horrified by this practice. Mother Teresa, whose feast it was the day before yesterday, was greatly grieved. It was one of the things that horrified her most in her travels, to see this practice coming in. And she knew why it was damaging. There is the story actually told by Mariasima of a person who died. Now, she had been placed in the coffin, but some relatives of hers had wanted to see her one last time, and they were shocked when they found that inexplicably the hand was completely black. She had wanted to be an extraordinary minister and was very proud and forthright in being one. And Mariasima understood that the Lord was giving a sign with regard to the way that heaven saw things. Shortly, we will have the canonization of Blessed Carlo de Acutis, He was only 15, but he had a great awareness of the Holy of Holies. He has died now, and we could add to the miracles that he was able to put together on video. We have had one here in Ireland recently, when precisely the host jumped out of the hand of somebody who was about to take it away. It went into the air, remained there in elevation, turned round and went over to the altar area and dropped into the ciborium, which had already been emptied. Angels intervened. Angels intervene because man can't be bothered. It would seem that one of the things that is going to bring severe purgatory to many souls is the way the Blessed Sacrament is handled. We need therefore to be aware that angels weep where man can no longer be bothered. We noticed that in this chapel, which unfortunately cannot be used, all is in place for receiving Holy Communion kneeling. We know how much it pleases heaven to receive Holy Communion in that posture. And when one receives kneeling and on the tongue from consecrated hands, and in a state of grace and peace and calm in liturgy which is divine and not human, then one receives the maximum. Let us ask ourselves why so few graces are received in practice when we are so close to the fount of grace. There are parishes, there are churches where things are well done, and there many things happen. There is no point in having huge drives for vocation when actually the essence is not being looked at a deeper level. When God is honoured, he then is not short of generosity. We give him his due, and he will defend himself well with regard to vocations. Ego sum